Passive-aggressive behavior is one of those complex interpersonal dynamics that can be difficult to identify but can have a significant impact on relationship. Unlike direct forms of aggression, where someone openly expresses frustration or anger, passive-aggressiveness is much more subtle. It's the kind of behavior where someone might seem agreeable on the surface but is actually expressing their displeasure through indirect means, often leaving the other person confused or frustrated. What makes passive-aggressiveness so tricky is that it often disguises itself as politeness or cooperation. Someone might say, "Sure, I'll do that," but their tone or body language might suggest the opposite. They might procrastinate on a task they've agreed to, or do it poorly on purpose, as a way of expressing their resentment without openly acknowledging it. It's like a hidden resistance, a way of saying no without ever actually saying it. This indirect approach can create tension, as the underlying emotions are never fully addressed. One common example of passive-aggressive behavior is the silent treatment. Instead of openly discussing what's bothering them, a person might withdraw and refuse to engage, leaving the other person to guess what's wrong. This creates an atmosphere of discomfort, but since nothing is explicitly stated, the conflict remains unresolved. The person on the receiving end might feel frustrated or even guilty, without fully understanding why. Another hallmark of passive-aggressiveness is backhanded compliments. These are remarks that seem like praise on the surface but carry a subtle jab or insult beneath them. For example, saying, "Wow, you actually finished that on time, good for you," might sound like a compliment, but the underlying message is that the person didn't expect you to meet the deadline. It's a way of expressing disapproval or criticism in a veiled manner, leaving room for plausible deniability. The person can claim they were being kind, while still delivering their critique. Passive-aggressive behavior can also show up in the form of deliberate inefficiency. Imagine someone being asked to complete a task at work, and they agree to it, but then purposely take much longer than necessary or make avoidable mistakes. On the surface, they appear to be complying, but in reality, they are expressing resistance. This type of behavior allows them to avoid direct confrontation while still conveying their dissatisfaction. The origins of passive-aggressiveness often stem from a fear of conflict or an inability to express emotions directly. Some people might have been raised in environments where open expression of anger or frustration was discouraged, so they learned to channel their negative emotions in more covert ways. Over time, this can become a habitual way of dealing with uncomfortable situations. However, because passive-aggressive behavior is indirect, it rarely resolves the underlying issue. Instead, it can lead to ongoing tension and misunderstandings. One of the most frustrating aspects of dealing with passive-aggressiveness is that it can make healthy communication nearly impossible. When someone refuses to express their feelings openly, it leaves little room for resolution. The other person may sense that something is wrong, but without clear communication, they're left guessing. This can lead to a cycle of frustration, where the passive-aggressive person continues to avoid direct confrontation, and the other party feels increasingly helpless in addressing the issue. In relationships, passive-aggressive behavior can erode trust over time. It creates a disconnect between what is said and what is meant, making it difficult to build open, honest communication. Partners or friends may feel like they're walking on eggshells, unsure of how to address the subtle cues of discontent. This lack of transparency can lead to a buildup of unresolved emotions, which can eventually cause deeper issues in the relationship. Addressing passive-aggressive behavior requires a combination of self-awareness and open communication. For those who tend to exhibit passive-aggressive tendencies, it's important to recognize the underlying emotions driving the behavior, whether it's frustration, resentment, or a fear of conflict, and find healthier ways to express those feelings. This might mean learning to be more assertive, even if it feels uncomfortable at first, and practicing direct communication in a respectful way. For those on the receiving end of passive-aggressiveness, it can be helpful to gently confront the behavior. Instead of accusing the other person, it's more effective to express how their actions are making you feel and ask for clarity. For example, saying something like, "I noticed you seemed upset when we talked earlier. Is there something on your mind?" can open the door for a more honest conversation. By creating a safe space for dialogue, both parties have a better chance of addressing the issue directly. Ultimately, passive-aggressive behavior is a sign that there's something unspoken beneath the surface, whether it's dissatisfaction, hurt, or anger. By fostering an environment where open and direct communication is encouraged, we can reduce the need for passive-aggressive behavior and create healthier, more transparent relationships.